Hi Nikolai, this is a feedback video for your first write-ex. I'm going to be talking to you for about 8 to 10 minutes about the text that you've written, and I'm going to go through my general comments. If you open the revised document on IceCore, you'll see that I have used track changes to correct errors, and I've also given you some commentary on certain issues. It might be to do with grammar, it might be to do with your choice of words and whatever. The reason why I'm looking this way is I have it up on another screen, so I'm looking at it every now and again. When you open the text, you'll see that some things have been highlighted in yellow. Yellow means that you have already made this error, and instead of correcting it all the way through, I'm just highlighting it. So go up, further up into the text to find out how to correct any errors marked in yellow. What I tend to do is that I give you the very kind of detailed corrections in the text, and then I speak about more general things in the videos in order for you to focus on both, but individually. I suggest that you go back and look at the text and revisit this video before you write your next assignment, so that you know what focus points you've been given. The way that I do this is I focus on the global level of the text. That's to do with structure, how you organize the information that you'd like to write about, and how you have created or written paragraphs, the way that they have been written and how they hang together. I guess you can say that the coherence through the text. I'm going to talk very little about the local level of the text. That's where you have your individual, very detailed errors. But I will say a little bit about that, and then some general thoughts towards the end that I'd like you to consider for next time. Okay? So beginning with the global level. You have an introduction and sort of like a guiding question for what you're going to write, which I think is a very good idea. What you want to consider here is that you were given a genre to write in, i.e. that you were asked to write for a publication. So there is a reader that you have to consider, and there is a type of style of writing that you have to consider as well. So you have to make sure that you have a good red thread running through the text to guide your reader and to make your own argument and your points of views clear and persuasive. If the reader has a sense that you are jumping around too much, that will make your arguments less persuasive. You as an author of that text becomes less persuasive. If we go into the organization, I would say that you're more in control of your text on page 1 than you're on page 2. There are a little bit of sort of shakiness in terms of how to construct paragraphs. So the best paragraphs are actually on the first page. Paragraph 3 is a little vague. Also in terms of the cohesion, I would go back and look at paragraph 3 on the first page and revisit that. I've given you some commentary underneath that as well. Remember, every paragraph has to say one thing in general. And if you start on a new topic, you have to start on a new paragraph. So if you feel like a paragraph is actually saying two major things, two major points that you want to make, you have to split that up into 2. And then remember to have a good transition between the paragraphs. You can work on that here as well. So good beginning, good paragraphs on the first page, bit more shaky on page 2. Go back and look at them and see if you can understand or you can recognize what I'm saying. And then when you come to the ending, perhaps a little fragmented. It's not as specific as I would have liked. Endings usually obviously conclude something, or they wrap up, or they repeat, summarize things depending on what the purpose is. You, I think, have answered your initial question, but again, it's a little fragmented. Could be more specific what you're writing here. So that's the global level and my impression of the overall structure. If you look at the local level, so one thing I'd like you to remember is when you use commas, to not use them according to Danish rules. So if you're not too familiar with how commas are put in English, and there are actually more than one set of rules for that. It's a lot less formalized in English than it is in Danish. I would suggest that you skip the commas so that you don't put commas where they become a hindrance to the flow of the text, because that is what happens if you use the rules that we have in Danish. In English, it becomes a weird kind of pause in the text. So if in doubt, don't do it. There are a couple of issues with subject-verb agreement, or what is called in Danish congruence. You can look this up if you Google congruence or subject-verb agreement, depending on your preference. There's going to be a lot of resources explaining to you how to correct those errors. It's not systematic, meaning that you don't do it all the time, but it's something that happens every now and again. So if this becomes a problem next time, you might want to go back and look at what that is, or we can talk about it in class if that's something you feel you want help with. In terms of your vocabulary, every now and again it's a little bit lacking in precision. Again, this is more prevalent on page 2 than it is on page 1. For some reason, your vocabulary and your precision and your nuance is stronger on page 1 than on page 2. What you can do, I think, is perhaps to give yourself a break before you hand in the text, and then look through the text critically in order to see if you're actually saying what you want to say. Sometimes the lack of precision in vocabulary has to do with simply not being too clear on what you want to say yet. Usually we tend to write things in vague terms, and then we get more specific as we get closer to the topic. So in summation, in terms of the content, make sure that you are aware of who you're talking to and why. What do you want to do with this text? Are you going to be persuasive? Are you going to be informative? What is it that you want to say? If you want to say, yes, we should intervene in wars, why is that? And why is Ludwig wrong? So just be very specific on and focused in what it is that you want to say. It may require that you write a little bit before you can get specific, but that's okay. That's sometimes the process. But in this case, it's a little vague. You should be a little sharper and more concrete in how you write. So keep that in mind for next time. I have graded your paper, or rather your essay here. If you want that grade, you have to find me in class and ask me. I don't give out grades unless people specifically ask for them. So if you would rather look towards how you can improve and not so much on the grade, then that's fine by me. If you think grades are important, then come and ask me. Okay? I'll see you in class.